Hi everyone, this is Jane Maldo, and today we're going to tackle about Lesson 11, Demography and Migration. For us to learn more about our lesson, let's first define the terms that we will encounter later as we go through our lesson. First is demography. Demography is a study of statistics such as births, deaths, income, or the incidence of disease, which illustrates the changing structure of human populations. Next is migration. It is the movement of people from one place to another with intentions of settling permanently or temporarily at a new location or geographic region. Next is international migrants, someone who changes his or her country of usual residence irrespective of the reason for migration or legal status. International migrants, these are the people who move from one country to another for the reason of living there permanently or for work. Next is internal migrants, someone who moved from region to another within their country of birth. Example of internal migrants are the people who are living in the rural area and move to the urban area. And another example is when I am living in Cebu and I move in Davao. That is another example of internal migrants, where I move in another region but still within one country. Now we will start our lesson proper. Introduction. 100 years ago, the world population totaled just 1.5 billion people. Since then, the global population is increased almost fivefold. Today, there are 7.2 billion people living in our planet. Of them, an estimated 232 million of international migrants, meaning people living temporarily or permanently outside the country of birth. This means that the world population before was only 1.5 billion and now it becomes 7.2 billion, which means our demographic increased. And in this 7.2 billion, there are 232 million that are considered as international migrants. It's what we have discussed before. International migrants are the people who move from their original country to another. And most of the international migrants move to high-income countries such as in North Hemisphere like America, Europe, and Australia. Economic development during the 21st century will be characterized by higher growth in today's middle and low-income countries and lower growth in current high-income countries. This means that today's middle and low-income countries will have a higher growth or will develop more than the high-income countries. Demographic change in the 21st century will be shaped by decreasing birth rates and increasing lifespans. This means as people know and learn more about control family planning, birth controls, the birth rates will decrease and lifespans will increase because there will be more older ones than young ones. Economic convergence and growing demographic disparities will have an impact on future migration policies by raising the stakes, the competition for skilled and semi-skilled workers. This means as our economic develops and our demographic increase, it will have an impact to our future migration policies. And it could also impact the requirements for the workers who will migrate and who will apply in other countries. Many highly developed countries and emerging economies base their economic and fiscal models on the assumption that current demographic realities will remain realities tomorrow. This means that developed countries and emerging economies have their own economic and fiscal models, and they base their models on the assumption that the current demographic realities will still remain and present in the future. Now we will discuss the important population trends. Since 2000, the world population has grown at a pace of 77 million people per year. Over the next decades, the pace of global population growth is projected to slow. But the number of people living in our planet will continue to rise for another 50 to 70 years. reaching 9.6 billion in 2050. As we all know that before, there are news about rapid growth of our population because of teenage pregnancy and such that. But it was shown in our trends today that the population size in the future will decrease. We have presented here a graph which shows the projected change in population size. And we can see here that most population growth will be concentrated in South Asia, the Middle East, and Sub-Saharan Africa, where high fertility rates and the consequences of rapid population growth will remain burning issues. However, in the North Hemisphere, we can say that there are countries that are start declining in population size. We have here another graph showing the changes in size of working age in population. Here we can see that in Japan and Russia, the domestic labor force is already contracting. Europe will experience the same within the next 10 years, and China will begin to see its labor force decline after 2020. In Latin America, the labor force potential will start declining after the year 2045. Meanwhile, working age populations will continue to work in South Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. Because of the declining working age, the expert assumes that it will have a negative impact on the economic growth. And at the same time, declining working age might create additional demand for migrant labor and skills. Now we will move on to flaws in conventional wisdom and implication for future migration and development. Conventional wisdom has it that people will continue moving from youthful to aging societies, as well as from today's poorer to today's richer economies. This means that the youthful societies of today will become an aging societies in the future, and today's poorer can be developed and will become a richer economies in the future. The current geography of migration is likely to change. There are several reasons for this. First, increased competition for skilled workers. More countries will soon enter the global race for talent and skills. This means that sooner, many countries will enter the global race and have competition for talent and skills. For example is China. We all know that China is kind of near here in our country, and we all know that China are looking for expert workers or highly qualified workers. Because of this, it becomes a competition from other countries now. And soon, in the not so distant future, because of the declining working age population, it will create a semi-skilled and low-skilled labor, which can turn China from an immigrant sending into an immigrant receiving country, compensating with Europe, North America, Australia for workers and skills. Second is changing economic growth patterns. Economic growth has shifted from the advanced economics to middle income and low income countries. This means that as middle income and low income countries are now developing and becoming more advanced, migration is not that prevalent already because there is a change in economic growth patterns, which means that the advanced or high income countries can be in a static or decline, and the middle and low income countries can be developed and can be a high income countries in the future. Third one is more domestic and regional alternatives to overseas migration. The improving economic situation in capital cities and other urban agglomerations of many traditional migrant-sending countries has created domestic alternatives to international migration. This means that instead of international migration, they can have an internal migration where the urban area are already accepting from people who are from rural areas because capital cities already have a lot of services that they can offer to these people. Fourth is impact of migration on welfare and development. When they move, most migrants manage to improve their income, their access to education, or their personal security. Migration and mobility significantly contribute to poverty reduction as well as increased access to education, health services, and food security. This means that migration can really help the immigrants because when they migrate, they can have bigger profit, and because of their bigger profit, they can have more access to education, food security, and also their fitness, and they will also have a higher degree of independence. As there are many positive effects of migration, there are also possible downside of migration and mobility. So here are the possible downside of migration and mobility. First, migrants are at risk of being exploited individually or discriminated against structurally. Employers, agents, or traffickers may be the perpetrators of individual exploitation. Some migrants are charged excessive commissions for recruiting services, currency exchange, or for sending money to their countries of origin. Structural discrimination occurs through the labor laws of destination countries, recruitment and promotion practices of employers, or tax and social security system that collect contribution from migrants but exclude them from certain public services or social transfers. This means that as there are many benefits of migration, there are also negative, and in addressing this negative, it can be mitigated through circular and return migration. Return migration not only raises the possibility of reversing the brain drain, mobile people often return to their communities with newly acquired skills, networks, and ideas for investment, supporting further development in source countries. Government can address other risks by setting the enforcing minimal wage levels, offering mechanisms for social protection, and enacting and enforcing labor and recruiting standards. Now we are going to tackle about the implications for policy making. The changing economic and demographic realities of the coming decades will have major implications for future employment and migration policies. Government in countries with youthful growing populations have an interest in reducing unemployment by enabling immigration and encouraging a steady flow of remittances. Next is governments in middle-income countries with economic growth will develop an interest in facilitating return migration and preparing for the future immigration of third country nationals. Governments in high-income countries with aging societies, in stagnating or declining working age population will need more investment in sound, forward-looking migration policies. Tighter competition for skills will put more focus on the education system of both sending and receiving countries to supply needed human capital to the global labor market. Developing middle and low income countries are at risk of losing native talents and skills through immigration. International migration remains only one possible answer to future mismatches between the supply and demand of labor and skills. Lack of cooperation between migrant sending and receiving countries increase the cost of migration and decrease the positive effect of social economic development. The government should tighten the policies and the rights for every immigrant, and also they should also think and watch about their people, the population and the economy of their country, because the people are the one who can impact, and the youths can give a bigger impact to this. That is why each countries should have a proper and nice policies for the immigrants, for also to attract them to migrate in their country and give them right services and good benefits that can help them with their daily needs and also to their families who are in their origin country. I hope you learned with our lesson today, which is demography and migration. Once again, this is JN Maldo. Thank you everyone for listening and have a good day.